champion stakes have been raised as we make our way to the closing stages of the 2024 Season 1 iRacing IndyCar Open Series. The mettle of the driver that has to win a championship is about adaptability, and here on the oval, the high-speed nature of Pocono, it's going to be about bravery that will see the drivers come out on top. Delighted that you join us for the final time this season. Totally not scrambled in the brain if you're Arjuna Kankipati. Hopefully a little bit more settled in his commentary mindset is Ewan O'Leary. Ewan, all I know about today is we're in for some mega pack racing, and that always means I get a little excited.
Yeah, it's always very exciting. A rather sporadic history of IndyCar at this venue, it has to be said, but some exciting races here down the years, and we're sort of waiting to find out what we're going to see here tonight. Not too many cars on the grid, which could have its benefits or its weaknesses, but that should be a fun one, and one that we've not really seen on any other of the tracks so far in this calendar.
No, you look at the schedule, and yes, we've had some high-speed ovals like Michigan, and of course even Texas in its own right, very, very high speed. But Pocono with its 3 turns, unique in its setup challenge, of course, and therefore in this open setup series, that's going to be the thing that springs to mind. Let's talk championship standings very quickly because, well, that's going to be where a lot of the intrigue may be, but our championship protagonist not racing here today. Adam Blocker told us a week ago that he'd be missing in action with some of the NTT IndyCar Series testing that's going on. He does have an almost 150-point advantage over Kevin Burrell going into this final week of the season, but realistically, Blocker, Burrell, some of their races going to be later on in the week where maybe sufficient points are going to be on the line. At the end of the day, Ewan, we're not going to get to see the championship showdown, but it's been a wild championship from what we've seen, of course, with Blocker being there through the first half of the season, often before we got to see him on the broadcast, and Burrell really making his way back into the hunt in the closing half of the season.
Yeah, it really closed up actually as we started to cover this series, and it was fantastic to see. But Adam Blocker in the last week or two has begun to stretch that margin out again to 156 points, which suggests that he will be able to take it all the way home. But then again, he's pulled that gap out over basically a week. That means that Burrell might be able to close it in just a week if Blocker has a bad time of things at Pocono, which can happen easily. So you do never know when we're ending off a season at a venue like this.
And the thing that I guess is going to be intriguing is you can get a couple of cracks at races here on iRacing, up to 4 before we start to pick average scores. If you do 4 races, your best score is what will end up counting when it comes to the championship mix. Of course, 12 rounds in the season. Let's not forget 7 of them being road courses, 5 of them being ovals. A driver does have to include 8 rounds into the championship. You must go well on both of the different disciplines. The drivers out on track right now for the qualifying session that is underway, and here at Pocono it's a high-speed thrill, that is for sure. Left side of the screen, Marco Brazil by more than 1/10 of a second sits on top, and 40.816 the benchmark. You look at the times behind that, that's a margin, Ewan, at the front.
That is quite a margin. The next 10th will take you down to about 7th position with Howard Tanaka Boese there, so a good margin. But Phil Krause just ruined it slightly by going to the front with Connor Harrington as well. Some very late lap times coming in here.
Yeah, and private label team hype in the closing stages 1, 2, and 3. They'll be hyped up, I'm sure, and ready to lead from the front in what's bound to be a pack race, but one that's going to have to see drivers play their strategy well to keep out of trouble and be there at the end. 85 laps onto the docket, should be about 60 minutes of racing, and as mentioned, private label team hype 1, 2, and 3. And then alongside Kraus, Brophy, and Harrington, Marco Brazil will find himself trying to challenge Seb Alexander, Robert Malechka, 5th and 6th positions respectively. About 2 tenths back to the first of the i5G machines and Christopher Demerit. He's got a teammate for company with Jacob Oster, Rashad Craig, and then Hamilton Akabuizi, 9th and 10th positions with Andrew Marquez, Nicholas Sudik just missing out on top 10s by narrow margins. Pink machines, by the way, dominating through some of the field. AJ Musselman, Matt Taylor, 13th and 14th. James Allen alongside Mark Murphy in the Little Eagle Racing entry, and then Robin Glennox, Raphael Eckert, the final 2 drivers in the field. All of our drivers setting times onto the board and making sure we're gridded up in an ordering that maybe Ewan is not going to lead to too many drivers tripping over each other on these race starts, especially knowing that into turn 1, with the draft playing its part, it could be rather tight and testy on the run-in through the opening corner.
Yeah, it's the tightest of the 3 turns, of course, down in towards turn number 1, and so you've got to be really careful on that run on the opening lap. But to be honest, I don't really see the opening lap being any more dangerous than any of the other laps, to be honest. It's going to stay relatively close, and on some occasions in full flight green flag running, we might well see something that what you'd expect to see off of a start, but in the middle of the race, if you see what I mean. It could be very, very congested indeed.
We had some rather, let's say, interesting racing at the Atlanta Motor Speedway this past weekend in stock car racing. It's not going to be too dissimilar in some ways, although 3 wide finish at the end, I'm not going to guarantee it, but I promise you it's not a unlikely scenario, that is for sure. The pace car ready to lead us away with 18 drivers in the field, and as I guess we should mention, cautions will be enabled here in this official series, and so by no means 85 green flag laps to be expected, Ewan, as we roll away.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, but you never know. I actually commentated on a NASCAR race here last week where I thought, oh, there's got to be cautions in this one. Nope. Not a single one. So you just never know, really, but you would expect there to be at least one stoppage.
At least one. Pit entry, of course, something interesting here, and you mentioned turn 1 being the tightest of the 3 corners. You in each of these 3 turns at the Pocono Raceway, the tricky triangle modeled after a different turn at a different track. Turn 1, 14 degrees after Trenton, turn 2, 8 degrees, the tunnel turn, and turn 3, 6 degrees after the Milwaukee Mile. Setup compromises then, and also dialing in your in-car tools. I get the sense it's going to be quite lively for the drivers trying to get themselves all sorted out.
Yeah, it is an unusual circuit to get used to, and a circuit that's immediately recognisable, isn't it, in oval circles. When you see the triangle, you think, well, this has got to be Pocono. There's no racetrack that quite looks like this one, and there's no racetrack or oval anyway that has quite this variation in terms of the banking. It's not exactly as if it goes to really steep to really flat, but these what seem like minor degree changes in the turns really do affect the cars a lot, and so it's a different adventure into every one of these 3 turns.
I mean, I don't even know how you'd come up with a prediction here, but Ewan, time to put you on the spot. Who comes out on top?
You might as well just guess anyhow you want, really. Robert Malechka I'll go for on nothing but guesswork.
Since you picked a Powerslide Motorsports car, I'm not allowed to pick a teammate, so I will go with Jason Brophy. Pace car off and away. Let's go racing at Pocono for the final time this season. Out of turn 1, Jason Brophy takes the advantage, but it's all going to be juking back and forth and slingshotting at the front already through turn 2. Phil Krause back to the point, and look at Robert Malechka up the inside of Connor Harrington and forward to third.
It was a fairly single file start actually on the way towards turn 1, right up until we got into the turn when ducking below Phil Krause was Jason Brophy, and it was all kicked off behind as well. But this is the sort of give and take that we're going to see again and again and again throughout this race. Everybody in one long draft train, and you'd imagine that will stay the same for quite some time.
You can see through the field there are drivers having to go side by side and keep themselves through the dirty air. That's Andrew Marquez almost up and into the wall. Checked up the momentum of AJ Musselman behind. Nick Sudik, Rashad Craig fighting back and forth, and you talked about it potentially staying packed up all the way through. They're almost 4 wide in through turn 2.
It was 3 wide in the end as they went through turn 2, but they'll get it all sorted out back here. There is a slight danger of losing the draft, to be fair, but it should all be fine if they get single file. Good run from Matt Taylor off the corner here, but he's going to have no help in terms of slipstream, and Rashad Craig should drag back past again towards turn 1.
You see the car just pull its way on forward and going to get clear before they even dive their way to the left, but inside line, the shortest distance through the corner. Taylor going to try and just wash up and avoid running into the path, and not at the stage where you're going to try slide jobs just yet. I wonder what the track conditions are like. As back up front, you can see they're just continuing to go back and forth and back and forth. Take a look at the right side of your screens. It's in the spring, so 2nd of March, about midday. Clear skies, not too much cloud cover, but only 33 degrees track temperature, Ewan, to think about.
That's not too wary in terms of really hot temperatures, which is certainly a good thing, but maybe not out of line, I suppose, for the 2nd of March, so very early spring, if you can even call it that. So that's nice and comfortable for the drivers. They're already finding themselves very high, though. That was Jacob Oster, I'm sure, right up against the wall.
traditionally, one might call that the Christopher Demerit line, but we're not at Indianapolis, and seeming as though that is the preferred line. Look at Malechka just searching for that clean air in that occasion, but as the private label team Hype 1, 2, and 3 continues, there goes the look. Robert Malechka can't hang around too much longer. He's going to lose out as they run their way back to the line, but the Powerslide Motorsports driver trying to work his way forward.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult, though. You'd imagine the teammates sort of helping each other in some way. A little bit difficult to do that, of course, around here, but if they can offer some assistance, then they're certainly not going to offer it up to Robert Malechka, who's kind of got to work on his own. Now he's got the problem, he's got the run, but look at that, he pulls out to no slipstream, no help at all. And so Harrington should be able to hang on, although they'll all catch up towards turn 2.
I think Kraus in the end had to eventually block the momentum of Malechka, and eventually now he'll get railroaded. Here comes Jacob Oster to try and look up the inside, but once again I think that inside just doesn't have the grip, doesn't have the speed at this point in the run to let you go on forward. And Oster back into line, unfortunately a teammate in the rear view mirror. Marco Brazil's only dropped to 7th position. He's riding in line for the time being, so just watching the teammates work in front. But 85 lap race, 6 or so laps green so far. And as much as it's staying close, Ewan, this is not the type of pack racing that we tend to see sometimes at Pocono.
Yes, it's very sort of logical or rhythmic, the way that the lead is changing at the moment, and the field is a little bit more spread out than I was expecting, to be honest, but not really sure what that exactly is down to. But maybe the fact that one team has got control of the front of the race is meaning that there is limited sort of strange things happening at the front of the field. Brophy and Kraus are just exchanging the lead almost every corner, it seems, at the moment, and nobody seems to be able to disrupt that.
Remember, you can follow live timing and scoring by heading to timing.RaceSpotTV. Going to be especially important as we head off into pit stop cycles here. Pit stops, of course, going to probably come, not just yet, probably looking at another 20 plus laps before that's a factor, but these drivers might already be dialing in the fuel maps on iRacing. You do have the ability to select through 8 different fuel maps, 2 of those being throttle maps effectively for road courses, but you're saving fuel, potentially riding in line behind. Could you be trying to take advantage? No fuel saving for Rob Malechka. He's finally passed Connor Harrington. Christopher Demerit's been able to follow through as well, and now in towards turn 1. Look up the inside from behind. Harrington tries to work his way on forward. Just keep an eye out for the number 1 machine to try and now pass Phil Kraus into turn 2.
Yeah, Malechka's sort of infiltrated the private label team Hype, guys, and he's going to go for this. So the control has been lost ever so slightly. Robert Malechka to the lead. Kraus is going to give him a hard time in towards turn 3, but now we might see some more of the traditional racing because the private label team Hype drivers are no longer able to control the front of the field, with Robert Malechka causing trouble.
And so, now that Malechka able to go down low and clear Kraus, I think we get our first indication that Ewan is spot on the money. Here we go, jinking back and forth, even back in the field. Just look at Mark Murphy topping his shot fighting. That's with AJ Musselman. But here at the very front of the field, big slide by Christopher Demerit feeding dirty air to Jason Brophy. Now you've got to wonder for the private label team Hype, how are they going to feel as they fight in the dirty air?
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be the big problem for them. But it's probably best that they find that out now, rather than the fact they get the overtaken in the last 10 laps and then they have to discover it with only less than 10 to go. It's probably better for them to be in this situation right now, where they are behind Robert Malechka. It does seem they might have fallen into a bit of an agreement here to overtake him and then get overtaken, although now Kraus and Demerit are very close. Christopher Demerit decides not to force the issue there, so actually it turns out that Kraus and Malechka are sort of exchanging the lead almost in the same way that the teammates would.
And so now I guess maybe it's Demerit's, the question will be, when does Demerit want to get aggressive, or is he willing to ride and just wait for the time being? Continue to fight through the field, not seeing any real separation, so it is 18 cars effectively in one long choo-choo train. There goes Brophy though in the, are we calling it Grello? Are we calling it yellow? Are we calling it green, Ewan?
That's green.
That's green?
That's not Grello, no. There's no, well, it's a bit yellow actually, isn't it? Now that I look at it. From the front it looks very green, but maybe from other angles there's a bit of yellow in there. Maybe just a lighter green.
Now, the reason why I brought this up is Jason Brophy and myself have had a bit of an argument about what color that is. He says it is Grello, by the way.
Well, okay. It's not
He's
the
wrong.
Grello, but...
No, he's wrong, but he says it's Grello.
Okay. Well, it's his car, to be fair, so
It's his car, he can still be wrong. Don't worry.
He might well have just chosen it, to be honest with you. So there we go. It's a nice livery, though.
It's not bad. Private label team hype somewhat synced up, although I think, Jason Brophy has the slightly older rendition of it. And now look at the front. Oh, goodness gracious me. It's already 7-10, as Brophy got a poor exit out of one of the corners. And now as Kraus takes the point, here comes Akabuizi, Oster as well. Brophy and Harrington having to defend from two of the I5G contingent trying to work on forward.
Yeah, so will this allow the top three to get away in this sort of agreement situation? Or will we get the field all smashed back together again here? Because Maleczka doesn't have an overtake opportunity on the way towards turn 2 here. Doesn't decide to go for it at turn 3 either. But it turns out they're just being caught anyway. So none of that will really matter in the end, I don't think. A lap of not overtaking and we're back together again.
Here we go. At the end of what is lap number 12, the field split by 6 seconds. And yes, even though there are some separations, this is the type of race where I wonder if anyone is on the fixed setup and how that's holding up. Of course, this is an open setup series. You're allowed the adjustments to the in-car tools as well, but it's that dialing in of the balance of the car that's often so important. Back to the front, they're 2x2 in through turn 2. And now as they wash up through the corner, Brophy trying to chop off and defend from Jacob Oster. This is where I was saying, Ewan, the relation to yesterday's race at Atlanta with the stock cars.
Yeah, it does have feel somewhat similar in that way. But if we can have as an enjoyable race as that one yesterday, then I think we're in for a good time. Maleczka weaving all over the place. And that's the other thing about this racetrack, especially the front straight. Wow. You can use a lot of lanes.
That, I think, was adding about 200 meters or so to the race distance. In the case of Robert Maleczka, it's allowed Christopher Demerit to take the point momentarily, but I think realistically back and forth we're going to go. Swings and roundabouts. It's just the question of how many laps are you going to lead. Doesn't really matter which laps you lead as long as you lead the final lap, and could be a surprise as to how it's going to end up. We have seen races finish under caution here in the past, Ewan. That's just something to keep in mind.
Well, let's hope that we don't see that here today, because that'd be a disappointing way to end. You'd have faith in these drivers that they'll be able to keep it clean for the final few laps of the race, but you do never know. And of course, 85 laps will be the distance. It's not like in other forms of over racing where we could go on forever.
I've just gotten some messages. Ooh, caution's going to fly. AJ Musselman in the 510 Esports car around, and hopefully with no damage. Everyone else has seemingly gotten through clean. Been getting some messages about color. There are some members of the iRacing IndyCar community that are colorblind, and so it was Ewan, we have to educate the people. Color has become a hot button topic on RaceSpot as Musselman's car is clearly broken.
Yeah, well, you'd hope so, yeah. Everyone seems to disagree on colour. I think what we've learned is that colours are different for everyone, to be honest. Here's the contact. Didn't know it was going to be contact, actually, but there you go. Was that Unglenix who got into the side of him?
I think so.
Certainly at the back of the field somewhere. But hard to know who to pin any blame on there if you can. It's just that these things happen.
Yeah, that's the turn 1 as well, right, where especially as you work through the run, you start to get your tyres wearing off, and I think talking about that, we're going to see everyone down on pit lane basically in synchrony here. Color, by the way, is not subjective. Color is definite. Like, there are hex codes exist for, web colors. There's a company that makes a lot of money about printing physical media to try and prove what color should be in the real world. Now, perception of color is subjective. That I agree with. But color...
Okay, fine. You've got such a computerized brain, you know.
Oh, I do. I'm a software engineer. I've just got off work as well. Color...
You're very much still in the same mode.
Color is definite. But the reason why it's become such a hot button topic on RaceSpotTV is Lewis McLeod doesn't know the difference between orange and brown. That's all I'm going to say. Go watch the 24 Hours of Daytona coverage that we had here on RaceSpot. What was that? Almost now a month ago. Within the first 10 minutes, you'll see what I'm talking about. Lewis is wrong. Anyway, wow. Here we're off to pit lane, and I think we're going to see everyone in unison.
Looks like it's got just under 70 to go, and you mentioned the tyres wearing there. Oh, well, Marco Aurelio Brazil stays out, but everybody else is into the pit lane. But you mentioned earlier on about the tyres and it becoming a little bit more difficult to race with one another as the tyres really begin to wear out, and so everyone coming in now to come and fix that. all pulling in at the same time. If you mix your box here, then you're going to lose out on a lot of places.
Yeah, and one thing I'll just say is, can we get limited tyre sets in the series soon? That would be a treat. Anyway, off and away we go. That was Rob Malechka dropping first, but now is that going to get him away in front of Kraus and Demerit? It will. Brophy Oster then behind, with Hamilton and Carboeasy dropping in behind. Harrington, Marquez, Taylor, and then Murphy, the rest of the top 10 that elected to come down onto pit lane. It was Marco Brazil, though, that has taken, I think, a fairly bold call. We're going on around halfway through the fuel run, I would say. A fairly bold call to elect not to come down pit lane. Now, the maybe way to think about this is we go racing maybe with 20 laps completing this race, so that's a 65-lap stint from there. Could he make it with a slightly shorter, by cutting out a pit stop relative to the field? I don't think so, Ewan, but I'm not a strategist.
Well, I can't really think of any reasons why he's stayed out at the moment, to be honest with you. He'll have older tyres that surely he'll get eaten up as a result on this restart. Even if he is able to stay out there on a long green flag run and stay at the front, he'll have to pit under green flag, which will put him at the back. And then he'll have to hope that he's not unlucky with a caution flag, so that's another disadvantage of taking this strategy. Struggling to think of any advantages at the moment, to be honest with you. He's done it, though. I wonder if he'll come in now and maybe go to the back of the field just to ride around at the back and sort of hope that there's a big crash and he can pick up the pieces from that, but he's clearly not doing that either.
Oh, you don't know Marco. Marco's going to stay out there. I think Marco's in a position, though, where he is thinking strategy. Maybe that's where the thought comes.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
What's the advantage to only taking one stop versus two? Because they stopped under yellow, so it basically doesn't cost them anything.
I'm not disagreeing with you. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, we'll see what happens when we go racing. Should see the lights go off on the pace car, and indeed they have been. You can see behind there just trying to shuffle themselves into the correct order. I wonder if someone got a slight speeding penalty on pit lane, and if there's an end of line, or if that's just cars going slightly slowly. If you're watching IndyCars for the first time, you're joining us on RaceSpot, and intrigued by all of this, we do not form up 2x2 for our restarts here. It'll be single file, and it's going to be no real passing before we get to the start-finish line. But Ewan, because it's such a long run out of the final corner into the first corner, don't be surprised if there is a little bit side-by-side through the field.
Yeah, we would not be surprised to see that. I mean, it's going to start immediately again, isn't it? It's going to start and look very similar to the previous green flag run from the very beginning of this next one. Just hope that we can knock off a few more laps under this next green flag run, to be honest, and we can continue on to see some good racing, because this is one of those races that doesn't really need cautions to close it up. Sometimes you're sort of hoping for one because you sort of need it to spark off the action again, but you don't really need it round here. We can have a long green flag run and it'll be very entertaining, so hopefully we can get one here.
I believe, by the way, AJ Musselman's popped into the RaceSpotTV YouTube chat. That's our first retiree, 17. Delara IR18 still out there. Interesting to see Jason Brophy go a little bit low. Not sure how he's trying to play this restart. Of course, if you stay driver's right-hand side, you can't be passed before you get to the line. But pace cars off and away. Field left in control of Marco Brazil, and after holding back slightly on the initial jump, Marco Brazil's now going to launch himself at the front of the field, but on more tyres, and with those behind, fresh rubber and looking to charge. He'll lead into the opening corner. Brophy having to defend from Jacob Oster, looking the long way around. Phil Kraus trying to go high on Robert Malechka as well, but out of turn one, power down, into turn two they run.
Well, he's made it a quarter further than I thought he would, to be honest. Brazil is really weaving around now to try and defend. So this is the first time we've really seen a proper stout defence of this first position, and maybe a bit of a preview into what we're going to see in the final 15 laps or so, because so far there's just been an agreed changing of the lead again and again into the turns, but Brazil really wants to hang on to this.
He's going to try and keep it up front, and if you can hold the clean air, you might have the car to be able to lead. Demerit and Oster going to swap around as no changes into the next corner. 65 laps. Is there a fuel window for those that have pitted? Don't think so, but again, I'm not a strategist, as ducking down low, Malechka holds Kraus with him. Here goes Oster, the worm man, up high.
Well, we can't get anywhere here with it's Demerit who's really cruising up to the back of them as well. Phil Kraus goes backwards. as Demerit gets through. Oster's really going for this as well. Impatient maybe with the following of Marco Aurelio Brazil. And so now Jacob Oster's going to have his own go. And he's got a really good run off from turn 3 as well.
Look how much he's trying to pull through as well. But as they work their way into the corner, Brazil's going to come back up high and force fresh tyres the long way around. This is where you'll see the car just lose the grip. Brazil slides up high, feeds that dirty air to Brazil. And now juking back and forth once again on the run into turn 2. Oster's got the privilege, I guess you'd say, of some clean air behind. He's going to continue to attack as Malechka defends from the fellow i5G car of Demerit in 4th.
There's a good line from Oster there, and he should be able to get round the outside through turn 3. He's like that high line, and the very close to the wall sort of line has been pretty decent so far, but not this time. Brazil hangs on again, and once again he's adding so many meters to this race by weaving around, but finally gives up the inside.
And this is where, with the worn tyres, he's not going to be able to do much except try and really go up high and send some speed into the corner. Cuts down low. Can he get the momentum into 2? Not sure he's going to be able to pass even with the juke down low. So as the number 8 machine works its way back into the lead, Oster not going to fight it. Look at just how much wider though Brazil ends up sliding through the corner. Nick Sudik also, you can see at the very top of the shot, just really hanging out the rear end here. This is an oval where once you get the open setups built out you, and the cars may sometimes get tough to drive.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as this sort of develops and continues on, just how the race changes. I thought Brazil was done there, by the way. I really thought it was over for him in the lead, but clearly he's able to hang on, and maybe the tyres aren't as advantageous as I thought. I thought he would get absolutely run over on this restart, but he's still leading.
Yeah, and that's where I'm also, again, just wondering, is there maybe some fuel windows to keep in mind? Because fastest laps have historically gotten to around the 49s, 41s. We're doing about half a second slower than that, and keep that in mind as we work through the race. Malechka down low, Oster up high. Can he use the draft to slingshot into turn 1? That's a... Oh, heavens, that's a car into the wall. Rafi Eckert's going to wreck, but because he wrecks, but with no cars following behind, we'll stay clean and green, excuse me, and continue to work on lap 24.
Well, he's going to be out, Rafael Eckert, but unfortunately, unfortunately for him, we stay green, and so it will continue on at the front of the field. Brazil hanging up a big train behind him right now, all the way down to 16th position, but real disappointment for Eckert there, who I'd imagine was into contact with others. I'd be surprised if not.
That was a big wreck. We'll see if we can take a look as they just continue to fight up towards the front, but I wonder if any drivers thought for a second there that the strategy was about to change. Continuing to battle, no real changes out on track in the time being. Here's a look at the replay, and it's the blue and red car that we'll keep an eye on, up high through the final corner. Not sure if there was contact, but that car just got pitchy as he tried to avoid running too far out wide. That's a hard lick into the wall.
It was a big bit of contact on the wall. Just so slight contact, and you could tell it was going to happen as well. You can hear him just lifting off of it and straight into the wall. That's big damage, unfortunately, for Rafael Eckert, and he is going to be out of the running for this race. So we've now lost 2 from the leaders.
So as up front, it's now Akabuizi 5th, Malechka 3rd, and, well, momentarily 3rd, back up to 2nd. A little bit of change as Brophy, Harrington and Kraus just dropped backwards. The private label team hype car struggling just a little bit. Oster last time by a second slower than his fastest lap. So I think that's maybe where some of the, to your point, Ewan, about Marco not getting ran over at the front, maybe there is something going on that we are maybe not entirely privy to. I'm also just going to wonder, given that we do have dynamic track conditions, could it be temperature? No, it's not.
It looks exactly the same, yeah, so it does seem like there's a bit of waiting around now. Maybe they're happy to follow through, and Jacob Oster decides that this overtake is not really worth the trouble for the lead, and he'd rather just sit in and wait behind. I mean, it does make a little bit of sense, but only if those behind you are not trying to overtake you at the same time. Augusta Demerit seems to be getting a little bit more itchy as we go on here.
But this is definitely just that little bit less tense than it was getting at the first stint. Maybe we're also waiting for the cars to burn some fuel. One thing to keep in mind is you have so much ability to dial in adjustments into setups. Oftentimes, cars aren't built to start at 0 on all of the weight jacker and ARBs to be set at 6 and 1, for example. You'll often set the car up so that it passes tech in the garage, and then you go and you dial in a bunch of crazy in-car tools that don't pass in the garage, but let your car be at the start of the stint where you want, and let the car develop over the course of the stint as well. And I'm not sure what the strategy here at Pocono is, but there's been times when IndyCar has run negative rear wing, and a track like this, Ewan, wouldn't be shocked if they'd like to do that here too.
Maybe. It's one of those circuits where at straight line speed, very important, and such a high speed racetrack around here. Everyone on the edge, absolutely of grip around these corners. A slight lift off in towards turn 1 on board with Hamilton Akabuezi here. But it's very much follow the leader, a bit more follow the leader than I was expecting really, but it's another of these situations where we're waiting for that one overtake to be made at the front of the field, and as soon as it is, the race is going to explode again for a little bit. And that seems to happen quite regularly actually, and has done so far this race. There's a bit of a pattern for one period of the race, and then for the next period there's a bit of carnage as they all start to settle down again after something happens, whatever that may be.
Here we go, though, as they just continue to slink back and forth. As you can see, Jacob Oster, no interest in following Marco Brazil that far down low. It's clear, at least for the time being, like we say, the hesitancy just on display. John Bainova jumps in to say, now let's go back to the road courses. You'll get your fair share of them. Let's not forget, John, next season. 12-round championship, 7 road courses, 5 ovals. If you want to fight for the championship, of course, that does mean you need to score decently on at least one of those oval rounds, and these super speedways you'd expect to be amongst the easiest of them all, out wide for some of the other contenders. That's Rashad Craig, who's, let's not forget, Ewan, as much as, you know, there's no Blocker and Burrell to talk about in the championship. Marquez and Craig, 3rd and 4th in points, running in inverted championship order down through the field.
Yeah, I wonder whether this is a good idea or not, to be honest. If we're presuming, or if they're presuming, that there's going to be a big crash at some point, then I guess this might be a good idea. But if there isn't one, and they could find themselves well outside the top 10 with not very many laps to recover those places, maybe this is just where their pace has found them at this stage. It's hard to know, but they are running quite a long way back compared to where you expect to see them with regards to the championship, and maybe this is a good time to have a good race and close the gap on the front two if they can.
I'm just saying, no Jesper Orman today. I did see him in the chat, so maybe there's just a little bit of setup lacking there, and Orman wasn't feeling like driving so early in the morning. I don't blame him, to be honest, either, given some of the racing that we're seeing. Kraus dropping further back. Harrington trying to avoid losing out, and as now Akabuezi is going to watch Nick Sudik try and fire it up the inside. Mark Murphy's trying to pass Phil Kraus while still trying to defend from Rashad Craig. We're on to lap 32 of 85 in this race. The drivers that have come down pit lane in that caution period, 15 laps into the run, and right on cue, Marco Brazil down to pit lane.
And that's exactly the problem I could see with that strategy, is that it's all well and good even hanging on to the lead if you can, but if you have to come into the pit lane after however many laps, then what's the point? You're in last position, and then he's sort of hoping there isn't going to be a caution at the wrong time for him, because if there is, then he's going to be trapped in last.
Yep. Let's see where he'll end up feeding out, of course. If he gets down to pit speed safely as well, no pit speeding penalty, he should come out just amongst some of the pack. Here, of course, though, still seeing the pace drop off. Last time by 41.7. Is it going to be a game of who doesn't want to lead? Is it going to allow the likes of Nick Sudik to charge on forward? 42.2 last time from Jacob Oster, which to me is pretty much a slam dunk indication that there is a little bit more fuel saving still going on. There's Marco Brazil out and clear into, well, not the pack behind. Going to have to watch out where the pace drops to see if he's going to be swallowed by those still running.
Made a NASCAR comparison earlier on. Now it feels a bit like NASCAR again, doesn't it? 42.2s at the front of the field. Last lap around is a lot slower than what you'd expect to see, and everybody very happy to follow behind as well. It's a fuel-saving situation now. I thought that when Brazil got out of the lead that stuff would begin to happen around, and it is just off of the leaders, but there is also a lot of fuel-saving happening here at the same time.
So I think that's Demerit now, who's given up a couple of spots, drops in behind both Harrington, Malechka and Brophy. Might have been Nick Sudik dropping as well. He's now trying to just get back into line and block the momentum of Andrew Marquez, who will be next up in the queue. So 42-2 for Oster at the lines, just waiting to see what Marco Brazil is going to do in comparison, with no drafting help, but also probably going foot to the floor and flat out. Plenty of side-by-side, though. It is getting very, very antsy through the field. 41-4 for Brazil, so slam dunk indication of maybe tires, maybe fuel. Whatever the case is, though, Ewan, it's getting checked up, more antsy through the field.
It is, and it's keeping pretty much everybody in touch at the moment, but again, with the front guys, not too much happening other than Demerit pulling out a line a couple of moments ago to get a few more cars in front of him. Not a lot else happening there, and a lot of lifting on the way towards turn 2. A bit wider from Mark Murphy on that occasion. We'll close back up again towards turn 3. They always look like they're trying to overtake each other actually in the turns, but they're just looking for a bit of clean air here, and then they very much tuck back into line again when they get to the straights.
Yeah, but Phil Krause was trying to make a move there. What a send that was in that bright pink private label team hype car. We'll have to try and grab a look at that from up above, because now he's going to have to watch as Mark Murphy tries to make an equally aggressive lunge. He'll lose out because Akabuizi's right there, and Murphy not able to wash up. So Krause in the 7 machine, a number 7 that, by the way, looks awfully like a number 1. Not confusing at all in the slightest. Works his way on forward. This, though, as we glance back at our replay machine, out of turn 2 was the move from Phil Krause.
Yeah, it was a smart move down the inside. You could see the field slowing up in front of him. Decides to dive to the inside of turn 3. Keeps very low, which is pretty impressive to maintain that kind of speed down there. But he's clearly got speed in this car, and it's the midfield where the action's really happening, and it's starting to just get to the front as well. Mark Murphy dives down the inside of everyone on this occasion. It's making everybody a little bit nervous about this, and the racing really is beginning here.
Oh, that was a big jink to the inside from Rashad Craig further back. And as much as they're starting to fight at the front, because they've already been fighting side by side at the back, they're now brawling. And I'm sure if you looked from up above, it would get rather intense. So the likes of Seb Alexander alongside with Matt Taylor, and we've had, one caution so far. Yes, caused by some side-to-side contact, but being realistic, only a solo car involved in terms of the damage. So still with the 17 out there and fighting, because AJ Musselman has returned to the track trying to salvage something from this race. Raphael Eckert now the only DNF. I mean, just look at some of these shots, you in working lap 39.
That's fantastic to see, but it can get better than this as well. We are hopefully going to see that when we finally get to the end of this race. Still more than halfway away from that. Still, what is it, over 100 miles I think left in this race now, so quite a long way to go, and a lot of stuff to be figured out between now and then, but it is starting to ramp up a little bit here, although staying clean and green for longer than we saw in the opening run of the race.
Hopefully we'll get a stampede of green flag pit stops in 9 on 10 or so laps time. Look through turn 1, 14 degrees of banking, and as much as a big move attempted there from Robin Glenix at the front. The big move sees Mark Murphy take the lead, and so he'll take Jacob Oster, Jason Brophy, as well as Connor Harrington with him. Not seeing the separation by any means. Now Rob Malechka's blown his engine. How has he done that?
Well, that's probably the reason. The reason probably being I picked him.
Temperatures, oh no, has he run his engine too hot?
Well, he's going at quite a pace for someone who's blown an engine, but now he pulls into pit lane, and that should be the end of his day, unfortunately. The end of his run up the front. Robert Malechka out of contention. He did seem to have a pretty good car as well, was pretty racy early on.
Well, the only thing, as we could just continue to watch him, the only thing I can think is that, you know, maybe at some point he damaged the engine, but like the only thing that makes sense was running it too hot. And I can tell you, as someone that has experienced that at Watkins Glen myself, I called it the full Fernando Alonso GP2 engine treatment. It's painful. It is not great by any means. Let's just turn up the engine and listen. That's interesting because it doesn't go like it would traditionally just go kaboom. It's a lot more gradual, and that's why he was able to work around at speed.
Yeah, so that's the whole speed thing, yeah. Revs it very high, of course, but I've got to say, it didn't seem to me as if he was revving it much higher than anyone else I've seen today in the onboards. So.
Well, the real issue, Ewan, is because this car makes its real grunt of the power between 11,500 and 12,000 RPM. So basically the last 500 RPM of the rev range, that's where you run it quite hot. And because he's spending so much time in 4th and 5th gear, maybe playing with the fuel maps as well, there is the possibility that he's just run too close to the sun and had his wings burned off in effect.
I know, but how close is everyone else then? Because I've seen quite a bit of that so far, obviously down to necessity, but clearly he's made some mistake along the line with regards to that, and he's out of contention. So it's really unfortunate because, as I said at the time, he's had such a good car and was right in contention for this race win. Unfortunately, that is no longer going to be the case, so we're down to 15 contenders now, really.
Robert Malechka saying, by the way, in our YouTube chat that the digital dash display that you have in these Dallara IR18s, the Cosworth unit that they all share on iRacing, is common across many different prototype cars as well. Dash wasn't even red, so he wasn't getting an indication that he was even running the car too hot, so just keep that in mind. His oil temperature was apparently not that abnormal, so maybe it's just hashtag blame Rob. Pace has picked up at the front though, business definitely booming since Mark Murphy took the advantage. We're back down to the low 42s, and I think that's why there's a little less side-by-side at the front of the field.
Well, maybe it's still very single file at the front, to be honest, between all of these drivers, and very much waiting for this phase of the race. Well, I suppose staying on board with Harrington here, the old RPM thing, using 6th gear, not really revving it as high as maybe before. Maybe there's no need to if you just sat here at the moment and saving a bit of fuel maybe, but it's very much a waiting game, and this waiting game has gone on for quite some time now. As they stick into the turns, they go searching for a bit of clean air. It makes it look like they're trying to overtake one another, but from what we've seen so far, they've been pretty unwilling to overtake one another, really.
You're curious about Marco Brazil, by the way. He has continued just to pull his way back into closer contention to the draft. He's only about 25 seconds away, which means that when we get to pit stop cycles, only a handful of laps probably in the main pack. Marco's going to take over the lead once again, although yes, let's not forget, pit stops expected across the field. We're just now potentially waiting to see if there is going to be another caution to separate things out, or in terms of strategy, or if we're going to get something a little bit more interesting. Ewan, next season, let's quickly talk about the season, the schedule that's already been voted on by the community, has been finalized and sent over to iRacing. We start things off at Sebring to line up, of course, with the real NTT IndyCar Series beginning. We don't have St. Pete. We've got a street circuit-esque kind of track at Sebring that they also test at for the IndyCars. That's going to be fun. Auto Club and Mugello. That's just the first 3 rounds of the championship. And of course then after that we have a lot more rounds that calibrate and line up with the NTT IndyCar Series.
Yeah, Auto Club would be a fun one for the oval side of things, and I can only imagine driving one of these cars at Mugello must be very fast, very high workload, but very entertaining as well. But a lot of fun to drive around there, surely, in any high downforce car, but especially these ones as well. Should be a lot of fun around there, but overtaking may be a little bit of a challenge. We'll wait and see. They seem like quite fast cars for that rather small circuit.
Yes, we also have 2 street circuits. We get both Long Beach and Belle Isle, so eat your heart out, street circuit racing fans. And of course it's great to be able to race at some of the official NTT IndyCar Series venues again. So 31 laps complete. We're just waiting waiting for someone to jink drivers left and to enter on towards pit lane. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen this time by, but it's one of those situations where because you're not going to go a full lap down when you're coming down to pit lane, is big jink there from the likes of Nick Sudik and Robin Glenix. Because you're not going to go a lap down, you can afford to come down early and try to make an undercut work. You do need some friends.
Yeah, it really depends how this cycle goes in some ways. If you're out there on your own, are you going to be stuck? Because after all, Brazil has gained a lot of time, but there's been a few games going on up here, so it's taking the pace out of the race slightly. We're still in the 42s, the high 42s now, in fact, out on the circuit, so it's not exactly a harsh pace as Rashad Craig comes into the pit lane. He's kind of kicking things off, but he is on his own.
See how his pace goes. It's easier, of course, to build your speed up if you're in draft, and we saw how much slingshotting there was. Let's not forget, at the start of this race, the ability to use the draft to send the draft partner a little bit faster into each of the corners. Haven't seen any of that since the caution came out. So, Murphy and the Little Eagle Racing Machine leads from Oster, Brophy, Harrington, Demerit, and then Akabawizi. So, you've got Team I5G, you've got the private label Team I mixed up in there, and Nath for Seb Alexander in the Alliance Racing entry. Glenix trying to work his way forward. Sudik rounds out the top 10, and no one else following Rashad Craig into pit lane. He had to come in and change a front wing. Slow pit stop. He's going to be swarmed by the pack.
So maybe that's one of the reasons why, but that's really going to disrupt things here. He's just out ahead, but how long is that going to be the case for, as the 13 driver pack bearing down on him very quickly indeed, now led by Phil Krause at the front of the field. Just look at how far Craig is behind Marco Aurelio Brazil, by the way. If everyone pits here, surely the 8 car is going to have a big lead.
Exactly. It's all going to come down to as here we go, drivers left goes Murphy and a handful of others. Oster in with him, and he follows in the spaceman behind. It's in Glenix. The Michigan number 17 comes on in, and so 52 laps now into this race. It's private label team out 1, 2, and 3 again, but a very different situation to the last time we were here, Ewan.
It is a very different situation, so a few down this time. Brazil will be ahead of them all by quite some distance here, as expected, but how quickly is he going to be caught? All of those things. Mark Murphy finishes his stop shorter than Oster, and so we'll get out ahead of him, and it wasn't really near them anyway. There's the gap for Murphy. Nobody joining this time apart from Seb Alexander, the only taker this time.
And so now Murphy and Oster have to work together. They were amongst the cars that were starting up towards the, staying up towards the front at the end of that stint, I should say. You can see that Phil Krause has now got Rashad Craig between him and Jason Brophy, actually. And so that is clear that maybe these private label team hype cars do have a pretty rapid machine. Let's see if they're going to ratchet up the intensity, the tempo, come the end of this race. Are we near the margin as well that they're trying to save enough fuel to go to the end? Because we're 36 laps into this race. That's what I was trying to do the math working back from. We can throw that 33 to go up on the left side of your screen. Demerit in this time, followed by Marquez, Sudik, and maybe some others. But the drivers at the front, Ewan, surely are going to try to go to the end and try to go 3 wide.
And they should be able to make it to the end as well. They've already done 37 laps on this stint, although admittedly the first of those will have been under the caution flag. So there may be slight concerns, and there may be a bit of fuel saving still to do yet in this race, but it should be fine, all things considered. That's an extremely tight line on the way towards turn 2, and everybody's got a fire right round the outside there in the leading group. The pack, in fact the whole field, a bit of a mess at the moment as the pit stop cycle works itself out.
And so of course that's where Marco Brazil's going to need a caution for things to swing in his favour. There goes Demerit off and away from the lane. Krause is going to stay out there, and he might be amongst the only car to be able to do so. Here comes Harrington, led of course this train into pit lane, but with Brophy, Akabawizi and Taylor in behind. Demerit's got a bit of a gap to Marquez and Oster, so he's actually going to probably have to lift off the throttle, give up a little bit of that momentum in order to not be swarmed too much in terms of speed. Now, Harrington and Brophy into the marks nice and quickly. How quickly are they going to be able to drop and roll away with a nice tidy exit?
That's going to be under 10 seconds in terms of this stop for all of them. Out they go. Connor Harrington, the first of them to make his way out again, but what about those who are already out there on the circuit? They're not really anywhere near these guys, so Connor Harrington's going to lead them around. How much of this group is going to form back up again here? Because normally pit stops really spread things out, but it might not be the case this time.
Not too separated at any point so far. It's Oster and Demerit 1.2 between them. Because Harrington, Brophy, and Kabawisi have all been able to be joined by Demerit in that number 2 I5G entry. So Phil Krause is going to become the last car to come down to pit lane. He is only going to need to put 30 laps of fuel into the car, and so you'd expect maybe for him to have a pretty tidy pit stop. It's only 9.3 seconds stationary. He's off and away, and he's in the race lead.
He is. How long is that going to last for, though? Because Harrington's out on the circuit with a good run out of turn 1 and through he's going to go. Connor Harrington will go straight through here, straight past Phil Krause. Jason Brophy will be next instead of Hamilton Akaboise, then Christopher Demerit, but Jacob Oster didn't quite make it for whatever reason. He's a second back.
So still waiting for that second group to form up, but eventually they will likely get latched onto these drivers. So again, that's what we were talking about. So much fuel save going on in the first stint. Hopefully these drivers have been able to put enough that the next 28 laps are going to be pedal to the metal. Go, 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 go. 41.279 for Brophy last time by. I think that's the indication that we're only about 4/10 off the fastest lap of the race. We're probably smaller draft pack, probably still going pretty quickly. Brazil only leads by 16 seconds. He'll have to come into the pit lane, Ewan, in probably around 5 or 7 laps time.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, it's probably not going to be very long at all, actually, for him. So these guys in the second group won't, or the first big group, I suppose, won't have to worry about him too much. But if there is a crash here and a caution, then Brazil will be into the pit lane. He'll have the newest tyres, and if everyone comes in, then he'll have the track position as well. So it could be something that works out well for him, but once again, I couldn't see how this strategy was ever going to work for him, unfortunately, and so he is now left hoping for a caution in these final 30 laps.
Will he be left high and dry? Will the caution save him? We'll have to find out. Mark Murphy battles with Marquez. That's now for what will be next 7 after Brazil makes his trip down to the pit lane. In fact, right on cue, here comes Brazil. So there is going to be no saving the number 8 machine as he tries to actually find his box. He maybe thought it was a little bit early initially, maybe also trying to scrub off a bit more speed. But here comes the field. Harrington, Krause, Brophy. Still 1, 2, 3 for the private label team hype, but it's Harrington that's made up some ground and fought his way on forward. Here comes Mark through. After Brazil going to be down in 15th spot. So he's in fact going to need a caution to probably even be brought back into contention for a top 10 here.
That's what I mean. He could have done with a caution either side of that pit stop, really. The benefits being different, of course, but would have preferred it before the stop because he would have an automatic track position as a result of that, but not really on this occasion. He'll only get up to the back of the train, so he won't be part of this leading battle unless something goes wrong, but you just never know what's going to happen in this leading group, to be honest, because they're battling so hard. Will they make it to the end of this race without another caution?
I'm very fascinated by some of the racing that's going on. Look at the big send by Kabawisi around the outside of Jason Brophy. That was reading the situation and making the move and having the car adjusted for the line. He's now going to get blocked off by Connor Harrington. Tries to go down low as the 11 machine now tries to get back alongside his teammate. High-speed game of chess with dire consequences if you make any sort of mistake. Last thing that you want to do in these cars, especially compared to a stock car, is make some contact, damage the wing, and make yourself a bit of a parachute in a straight line. Akabuizi once again on the outside. Brophy's going to box him out, though, as we head off to turn number 1.
Yeah, private label team hype sort of with control of this race all over again. It's sort of come full circle now, and we're into a similar situation with Phil Krause leading again. You saw the way that Hamilton Akabuizi was hung out to dry there. That's exactly how drivers of other teams are going to be treated by the looks of things towards the end here, because they're only helping each other basically, and trying to make sure that just one of them takes the win.
It is 11 at the front because Rashad Craig along with James Allen and Robin Glennox have been dropped. They're fighting for 12th position amongst themselves. Marco Brazil 15 seconds behind them and looking to try and close. Marquez and Taylor alongside further behind. Krause and Brophy swap back and forth at the front. I mean, we could talk ad nauseum about lead changes here. It's one of those races where no lack of changes at the front. Not complaining about that. It just means that we're not getting very excited about all of this back and forth and chopping and changing. It's actually what's further behind that's maybe a little bit more important, a little bit more strategic.
Yeah, it's not too worth getting excited about for the moment, because it's a lot of exchanging places that are just going to be exchanged back again in a couple of moments' time. So it's a bit of waiting around here, although there is finally moves happening at the front at least, which is different from what we just saw in that middle stint of the race after the caution. We didn't see any overtakes basically for the leaders, but now we finally are. There's still very much a pattern to it, a rhythm to it, and very much thinking behind this one. Crouch should go back to the lead here, but Brophy letting him have it. It's very well thought out here, very methodical, the way they're just exchanging the lead between them.
See, the track temperature has cooled off slightly, so I say slightly, 1 degree Celsius, really not much of a shift if we're being completely honest. But is that going to allow, as you hear the roar of the R18s, is it going to allow a little bit more aggressiveness when it comes to the in-car adjustments from the drivers? They may be hoping so. Demerit trying to go down low alongside of Harrington in that number 11 machine. Will run back into line. No move really being offered. Kraus swaps at the front. Still got 20 laps to go until really we're into the business end of things as well. So at the stage of the race where you've got to save your tyres.
You've got to be careful, make sure you get to the end on what you've got at the moment, or presume that you're going to the end anyway. I'm not sure what would happen with a caution at this stage in the race, whether everyone would be in or people would be staying out at the front of the field for that track position to keep it, but it's a difficult conundrum, a difficult one to know as well, whether we are going to see this one clean and green to the end of the race. I would describe the first caution actually as a bit of a fluke almost. It was a two-car incident that just shows, I guess, that no matter how many we've got in the leading group, a caution can come from anywhere at any time.
I think right now it's going to be which one of the team hype machines comes out on top. Just watching from up above, Demerit doesn't seem to have the top-end speed to be able to make moves. I mean, even watch here. Harrington on the outside. He's almost a full car length behind coming out of turn number 3. And I know he's got the draft of his teammates in front, but he's now almost a car length in front by the time we get into the corner. There's a distinct difference in terms of the top-end performance. I mentioned negative wing earlier. You can make changes to your wing angle and pit stops, but it tends to add some time, and so it's not something you do in green flag stop. So if Demerit and Oster don't have as much speed, Ewan, there's not much they can really do about that except be aggressive.
Well, what can you do when it's 3 against 1 in this situation here? I guess be aggressive is the only thing that you can really draw for, but even then it's tricky. Look at the understeer that Demerit got there through turn 3. Oster will like that. He'll get a bit of slipstream as a result and get brought into this one a little bit with the likes of Matt Taylor. So there are a few more drivers in this group now.
Looking at the left side of the screen, you can see that Matt Taylor is just continuing to slowly work his way forward in the closing stages here of this race. Finds himself up 8 so far. Murphy's +7. A couple of drivers with strong contention to put themselves in as the biggest mover of the day. Purple rims on the side of the Dallara IR18. What's your opinion, Ewan, on coloured wheel rims?
I maybe wouldn't pick purple, but I don't mind them in principle. Maybe not entirely sure about the colour of these ones. At least they match the car, I suppose. I've seen worse.
You've seen worse. That's the nicest thing you can say about it.
Well, yeah, because sometimes they actually look good, but I'm not quite so sure this time.
Well, as at the front they continue to just change, let's keep an eye on the fact that Christopher Demerit is having to keep chipping away. It's like ice right now, and he's struggling. There's not much he can do. 18 to go, becomes 17 at the line. And as Robin Glenix is going to leave pit lane now, is this going to be the opportunity? Is there going to be some draft, some dirty air for Demerit to take advantage of? The problem is, though, look at the speed they've got as they fire off turn 1.
Yeah, you've got to remember it's not only the run towards turn 1 when you're exiting the pit lane, but also on the way out again. out of turn 1 and into 2, you're still losing time, and so that makes it very, very difficult to get involved. Demerit really needs some help here from someone else to really get amongst the private label team hype drivers, because clearly he's not able to do it on his own. They're helping each other, and he just can't get anywhere at the moment. We've got Jacob Oster just behind, then Matt Taylor as well. Hamilton Akaboyes has really struggled in the last few moments. He's now down to 7th.
I think that's the issue, right, is you've got 3 teammates all just fanning out and feeding dirty air, and Kabuizi separated from his teammates by Taylor. Robin Malechka did seem like he had the ability to get alongside and disrupt, so at this stage, Demerit's going to have to stop being a little bit more, let's say he's going to have to be an instigator. He's going to have to be aggressive. He's potentially had a chance to get to the inside of Jason Brophy through the final turn, but Brophy doesn't feed him the opportunity. I think it's definitely not Grello. That's definitely not Grello.
It's a bit more green, really. But anyway, he's quite distinctive. All the top 3 have quite nice colours to them, to be honest with you. And they're mobbing the front very nicely in a sort of similar style, but different colours, of course. And still exchanging the lead between the 3 of them, or well, the 2 of them really, with Connor Harrington sort of sitting there protecting them both.
Out of tunnel turn, are we going to see Demerit hold back? He's going to actually be a little bit more tentative. Now, Oster doesn't force the issue, doesn't make the move. Does Demerit get a good run, a chance to get alongside into 3? Answer is no. In fact, that was out of 3. Clearly getting a little bit mixed up by the outside camera shots and the perspective from the trees. Long way around through the 14 degrees of banking for Jacob Oster. There's nothing that they can really do. 10 cars in this queue, and realistically, no moves really being made.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much a stalemate for now, and the problem with it as well is that I don't see how it's going to change either, because as soon as you try and pass Harrington, the 2 in front dive to give him the slipstream, and the straights are too long for you to deal without any slipstream. So where do these guys in 4th, 5th or 6th position get a move done? Where do they improve in the field at the moment? It's very difficult to see where they're going to be able to do this. So it's getting desperate times now. Final 15 laps, not much time remaining in the race, and they've got to do something quickly.
Trying to decide if you're a private label team hype, when you start to make your moves. Demerit's done it. He's passed Harrington. What will he do in through the final corner? It's flat. It's modelled after the 6 degrees of banking at the Milwaukee Mile, and he gets mobbed. Worn tyres. Harrington holds on. Here comes Oster. He might have to take the charge to the 3 up front.
Yeah, he's trying to, and that was the closest we've seen so far this race. This stint of the race anyway. That was the closest by far that we've seen, but still nothing doing. Still the front 3 protect each other, and I'm not sure how long this is going to go on for. Is Connor Harrington going to protect his front 2 for the entire race, or is he going to want to get involved himself finally towards the end? That moment clearly hasn't come just yet, though.
So the point of no return in terms of a caution flag ending the race, probably 3, 4 to go, somewhere around that marker. So we've still got 9 or so laps before we can even think about that. Here comes Demerit once again. He's got the draft of Brophy. Can he get alongside of Kraus into 1? Will he make it 3 wide? He forces Brophy to give him some room, give him some consideration, and Demerit's finally broken the stranglehold. Will the Hornet's Nest kick off now? Brophy back down low, and he'll force the way 3 wide into the tunnel turn.
And Kraus is going to work his way through as well, so he did so well to get through to Demerit, but he's thrown it away immediately by not defending the inside line enough. He could be exactly where he was a few moments ago again here.
I mean, that's an ominous sign looking rearwards from Kraus. Brophy will grab the lead at the line, but it will return to Kraus into 1, you'd think, on the outside, and with the speed heading off into that opening corner. What does Demerit do? Here's Harrington to take it 3 wide. He's not hanging around anymore. New race leader. It's the 11 machine. Demerit's back to 4th, and all of a sudden, a moment of hope, a moment that we thought that maybe 1, 2, and 3 was strangled off. Demerit will take it 3 wide again. He doesn't have the grip to make it work.
Oh, it's like a rolling roadblock from private label team hype at the moment. They just can't do anything about it. Jacob Oster now in the position to try and do something, but he just can't work his way through. Up high at the moment, ducking back low again, getting the run, but this whole cycle is going to have to start all over again.
I think Demerit might just have hit the wall out of turn 3. At the very least, he's down to 7th. And just like that, the impetus given to 2 other machines in the i5G stable to now have a good go at trying to work forward. We're now within, though, 9 to go. All bets are off. I don't think there's any team orders at the front now. And Harrington watches to the inside as Kraus takes the lead.
Yeah, through he goes. And how long is that going to last for now? You'd imagine not very long. Harrington looks up the inside again. Is Brophy going to... Oh dear, it's scraping along the wall there was Jacob Oster trying to find the high side.
A little bit too wide, a little bit too greedy on entry. We'll lose out to Taylor, who's suddenly in with a shout of a good top 5 finish. Demerit wants to work his way forward again, though. 5 minutes of racing. That's what we've got left if we stay green. Harrington's got a quarter of a second, is out of turn 1. If for the first time we have no change into the tunnel turn, is that an indication that your leader had too much of a lead? Kraus will jink left, fly his way on forward. 7 to go this time by. I mean, I have no idea who comes out on top. I think I'm confident in saying it might be Private Label Team Hype. Akabuizi trying to interrupt them.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I'm willing to go out on a limb with that just yet, because I feel like there's still more life left in this race, and Christopher Demerit showed a few moments ago that it is possible to get amongst them and give this a go, but you've got to try very, very hard indeed. And so far, Hamilton Akabuizi hasn't quite done that. He'll realise quite how hard he needs to drive that car into the first turn, or any of the turns really, to try and work his way through here in a moment, but it hasn't come of anything just yet.
No contact with the wall then for Demerit. Just a close moment with Matt Taylor as we grab a quick look at the replay. 7 to go, still 6 cars within half a second at the front of the field. Intense IndyCar racing. We'll get a couple of weeks off from this. Back with the road course, of course, to kick things off on March the 11th. And then into Auto Club we will go. Might see 4, might see 5 wide. But this late in the run, we are 25 laps now in for many of these drivers. Tires at a premium, 3 wide for second. Oster had a look, doesn't work out.
No, not this time. Kraus and Brophy were the ones under the pressure, but with the high line, they get the big run off of the corner, and they get such a gap as well over Oster into turn 2, who closes it in again. Now he needs to get through and slide in front of one of them. Big bit of contact, but he's got to get in front of Brophy here and slide in front of him, but there's no space there. Oh,
he tried the slide job. They both were edge of their seat racing there, gripping their wheels and hoping to hold on. Oster's now lost a whole head of momentum, and look behind. Akabuizi, Taylor and Sudik lost some ground as well. Oster's forcing it. He's got to. Look at him search for clean air, almost doing a Ross Chastain on the wall. 5 to go, Harrington out front, and he's led at the line for a couple of laps going by. He seems to have positioned himself quite well. What's going to happen though in the rearview mirrors? Oster almost banging off the wall.
Almost just riding along the wall as if it's any quicker, but he's so close to that outside that that's all Brophy has to do. If he takes the high lines, he knows immediately that he's taking away the best line of Jacob Oster, so his job made even easier than it already would be for Private Label Team Hype, although now they fight between themselves.
We're 4 wide into the opening corner. Backing out is Phil Kraus. Wise to maybe lift off and save them all. Brophy takes advantage, takes the lead. Harrington displays, and Oster up to 3rd. 2 wide, 2 rows deep. To the tunnel turn we fly, and suddenly Oster back to 4th. Private Label Team Hype domination still on the cards, but with Oster trying everything, and Akabuizi now with him.
It's opened up now. Private Label, into the wall. Oster again, open to the wall through turn 3. As we go to 3 to go now. Private Label Team Hype have opened this up to everybody. They've invited everyone else to the parties. Now there is a danger that one of their drivers doesn't win this race, but they're willing to take the risk, the teammates, because they all want to win themselves.
That point of no return, we've reached it. 3 to go at the line, and now that lead grouping down to probably 9, you'd say. Mark Murphy's lost some ground. He's 1.2 off the back of the draft. Even Andrew Marquez, if we spill and thrill at the front, could slip on through in that bright pink and black machine at the very back of your shot, just working into the final corner. 2 to go this time by. The drivers have understood the challenge that they need to figure out, where they need to place their cars. It's still PLTH, 1, 2 and 3. Harrington now juking down low. It was Kraus that led at the line.
And so Harrington will take the lead here, but here goes Jacob Oster to the inside, tries to slide in front of Brophy. It's not going to happen, and he's going to get swamped. Oh, either side by Matt Taylor and Hamilton Akabuezi, who both go through.
What a bit of reaction driving there was there. Hamilton Akabuezi is going to keep us out of trouble here, but let's go on to the final lap of the race. 9 cars in one storming hellbarn of a finish. Connor Harrington's going to lead, come to the white flag. Kraus, Brophy, Taylor and Akabuezi within half a second.
It's all on here between the teammates. It looks like they're going to be able to share the spoils between themselves, but who's going to take it? Brophy doesn't take it free wide on this occasion in towards turn 1. Phil Kraus does take the lead. How desperate are they going to get to win this race?
Have to say, Jason Brophy needs to time it out of the final turn. He's too far back to go 3 wide into the tunnel turn. Harrington in the hot seat now. Taylor almost gets ran into by Oster, who knocks down the wall. Akabuezi's going to take it 3 wide behind, but 3 teammates at the front. Which of the private label Team Hype machine will win? Harrington trying to hold off Kraus, but with the momentum and with the draft, it's not enough. Harrington, by 33 thousandths of a second, wins here at Pocono.
It's a 1-2-3 for the teammates. Connor Harrington takes it though in the end, getting the nice run off of turn 3. Just enough to hold off from Phil Kraus in the end. Anyone could have won that, but in the end, private label Team Hype controlled it perfectly. They made what is a pretty uncontrollable race at the best of times, quite controllable as it turned out in the end.
Margin updates to 15 thousandths. We may not have got the photo finish that they had at Atlanta, but boy, American Open wheel racing, it can be fun, it can be thrilling, and it can be intense. Let's go and take a look at the replay and probably a couple of different looks at it. This is them on the run to the line. You can't really tell much from that perspective, but being realistic, Ewan, it was all set up by the setup that private label Team Hype brought, no pun intended.
Yep, it was fantastic driving from them all day long. Harrington here made sure to protect the inside off the final corners to give himself the best run to the line, the shortest run to the line, and Kraus couldn't quite get there in time. It was all through here into turn 3. They knew they had it between each other at this stage, but Harrington making absolutely sure to protect that inside line was enough in the end.
And remarkably, we talked about cautions at the start and the potential to potentially see them. 1 caution was all we had. Marco Brazil, the only driver to try something different on strategy, didn't necessarily pan out for him, but what a race was had, what a race to witness, and now we look forward to the next season and some post-race coverage where we can enjoy a chat with the driver. Let's quickly grab a look at the race results before we say goodbye. Private label Team Hype going to be 1, 2, and 3, and then Harrington, Kraus, and Brophy all split by a 10th and a half. Matt Taylor and then Hamilton Akabuezi 4th and 5th, with Christopher Demerit then 6th to make it 2 i5G machines at least within that top 6. Sudik 7th in front of the slightly broken Jacob Oster, Andrew Marquez, Mark Murphy rounding out the top 10. Murphy dropping back in the closing stages, maybe having to save just a little bit of fuel. Seb Alexander and then Marco Brazil 11 to 12 positions, with James Allen the final car on the lead lap. And Glenix 1 lap down along with Craig, both drivers coming in, I think, for some damage repairs along the way. For Robert Malechka, AJ Musselman and Rafael Eckert not able to see the end. So that's a look at the race results. Let's go ahead then and go down to Victory Lane to go chat with some of our drivers. Starting off, of course, with Connor Harrington. Connor, I mean, a thriller of a finish, but talk us through everything that built up to that moment as well, because, well, seemed like a couple of moments where it could have been a little bit more dangerous.
Yeah, Cold Pocono just seems to, bring out, the crazy races. I mean, even when, the series used to come here in real life, especially with the DW12 package, like these races were just crazy. And it just became a really weird, fuel save race with that 1 caution in the beginning, and everybody was just trying to jostle for position and get, make a number. And yeah, we just managed to get hooked up with my 2 private label Team Hype teammates, and we were able to do a real nice 1-2-3 there. So it was very, very hairy at some points, but it was good, fun racing, and good to see nobody end up in the catch fence.
What was the wing setting? Negative wing? Come on, spill the beans.
Listen, I have spilled enough for the community as a whole. You are all
Fair
welcome.
enough. Fair enough.
Nobody has sent me like chocolates or flowers or like a thank you note. I'll take one of those like every once in a while for all that stuff. But no, I mean, Jason built a really great setup. We found some stuff last night, and you know, it was a lot of fun to drive. And I obviously I can't thank him enough for all the hard work that he does.
Well, congratulations, Connor, on the 1, 2, and 3, on the victory as well, and hopefully we see a bit more of you in the next season of the iRacing IndyCar Series.
Yep, cheers. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, RaceSpot. Good to be back, and we'll see everybody soon.
From Connor Harrington down to Phil Kraus, we will move. Phil, 15 thousandths of a second. What more did he need to grab the win there?
Honestly, the thing that probably would have helped the most is if there weren't other cars behind us, because most of the focus there was just keeping the 3 private label team hype cars in the top 3. So I don't know. I was close, not close enough, but yeah. Cold Pocono puts on a different type of race than I'm used to at Pocono, I'll tell you that much.
Was it enjoyable at least? It sounds stressful. Was it fun?
It was stressful, and like the entire middle phase of the race, we were driving like a second and a half. It was just like the Daytona 500, saving fuel, just pitter-pattering around behind Marco, and then it was Mark for a little bit. But I mean, it's an oval race in the IndyCar. It was all right. There's definitely a lot of tracks that I'd not want to drive more than this, even in its cold configuration.
I guess that's about as high a praise as maybe you could hope for. Phil, congratulations on second, and hopefully we see a bit more of you in the IndyCar Open Series next season here in RaceSpotTV.
Yeah, cheers, Arjuna.
All right, over from Phil Kraus to, well, the person credited with building the setup last night. Jason Brophy joins us in the commentary booth. Jason, what wing setting were we using? I couldn't get Connor to spill the beans. And apparently neither will Jason. Jason, do we have a copy with you?
Yeah, you do. Sorry.
There you go.
You can see the front was step 3, right? So there you go. We were on step 3.
What was the rear wing, though? What was the rear wing?
We had no wicker on.
So, was it negative? Can we run negative?
No comment.
Oh. Well, we were speculating. We were having fun during the race itself. Maybe a bit more fun than you at times. Phil was talking in particular about how difficult it was with those behind. Did you guys have a bit of a top speed advantage, though, that was making it that you were able to hold the 1, 2, and 3 and fan out and feed a little bit of dirty air?
I mean, I have no idea what everybody else was running. I know we were fast in a straight line, but it also helps that the 3 of us were just able to coordinate and give each other air, so we always had momentum off the corner, whereas everybody else was having to strategize. I do feel quite dirty, and I don't like the way that ended, but it's what you had to do to control the race. One of us is going to get shuffled out. We held it. All 3 of us finished in the top 3. I'd like to have taken a shot, but I didn't get a good run in 3. It's one of those, I thought I'd actually be able to get a better run in 3 coming to the line than I did, and by then, the moment I went into the corner, Phil ran a little higher than I expected, and I couldn't get the gas going. So, fast on the straights, but I don't know relative to anybody because we never, wasn't much full push.
Talk to us then about the balance of the car in that middle part of the stint where you, of course, were saving a lot of fuel, but I always wonder when you're saving fuel, what happens when you drop back into the pack and you suddenly go from enjoying clean air to having dirty air? How was that as an experience for you? Was that stressful?
Well, the car felt great when you're going 2 seconds off the pace. I made the mistake on that second run. I was trying to add rear wing and I added front wing. So, but it turns out it was fine. The car was good when you're going 2 seconds off the pace. So I really felt comfortable with the car. I made an adjustment for the last run to go a little faster in a straight line, take that front wing out. But, it felt good, but I still don't know how much I got to see. With how cold it is, it's just everybody on top of each other. It's hard to say, if anyone was even better than anyone,
Got it. So all future oval races will make them as cold as possible, so setup doesn't matter. And then you don't have to build one, Jason. I got it. I understand. That's what you're saying.
True. Yeah, I'll just go find whatever fixed set we got and call it good.
I actually said maybe some people are running the fixed setup here today. Good job, though, on the 1, 2, and 3, Jason. And great way to end the season for the private label team hype.
Thank you.
Jason Brophy rounds out our post-race coverage. Always great to be able to catch up with the drivers. And as Ewan and I were chatting about slightly earlier, boy, do we have a fun season coming up in store. This is your schedule for 2024 Season 2. Again, lining up with the iRacing IndyCar Series, which matches up with the NTT IndyCar Series. We'll start at Sebring as they get things kicked off at St. Petersburg. Auto Club to match up with Thermal Club. It's a little bit weird. Yes, I know they're racing road courses, we're racing ovals, but at least we can still do that here in the virtual world. A. B. It's on the West Coast. So, geographically, I guess it makes sense as well. Magello's going to be a lot of fun. Plenty of elevation change there, and I think it's going to be really curious to see how tire strategy works out. Sonoma, always a wild one in terms of the undulation and being able to get the power down through some of the fast sweepers at the end of the lap. Texas Motor Speedway, then back over, of course, onto the ovals before Streets of Long Beach, Barber, Richmond, Indy GP, Motegi, Indy Oval, of course, the week of the 500 itself, the great race, and then Belle Isle directly after. So much excitement, so much to look forward to. That, of course, all left in the future. For now, though, it's time for us to say goodbye. What a fun opportunity it's been for us to capture IndyCar coverage on RaceSpot once again. We started at Nordschleife, rejoining the drivers of the iRacing IndyCar Series, and what is not an unfamiliar season finale in Pocono, a great way to close things off. For the team behind the scenes, for Ewan O'Leary, the handful of other commentators that have joined, myself, Arjuna Kankipati, in bringing you the coverage over the season, we appreciate you joining us. We hope to catch you in a couple of weeks' time as well. Enjoy the rain in a week's time. Can't wait to see what iRacing's got in store for all of us in its brand new build next week.